Boxes full of handwritten letters, holiday cards, birthday greetings, and postcards. My entire childhood is wrapped up in these keepsakes, brimming with tangible memories of my travels, friendships, heartbreaks, and unforgettable encounters. Then came university, and with it, my first ever email address, a magical key to a world of instant communication, transcending borders and cost free. Essays were meticulously saved on floppy disks, and with the mystique of MS DOS ruling the scene in 1996. Yet, even in this digital awakening, I'd spend hours in the library, logging out physical books, sifting through journals, and photocopying pages to highlight with my neon pens. Getting my first Nokia phone was another rite of passage into adulthood, where calls and texts on the go felt like a digital revolution. And the journey through mixtapes on Walkman to CDs on the Discman with a mini blip with the mini disc player in between shaped our soundtracks. Life taught us to treasure both the static and the speed as we shifted seamlessly from physical to digital. Hello, everyone. I am Goldie, your host for today.
And I'm Lakshan, your co host. And you are listening to episode 9 of Mind the Gen Gap podcast.
It wasn't until recently that I realized there's actually a name for all of us who feel a blend of both worlds. We are the cuspers who have experienced something that was static and had a degree of permanence to something that's ever evolving and changing by the second. Our childhood was 100% analog, pen and paper. And in adulthood, we were welcomed with digital, albeit dial-up internet to start with. We are the Xennials. If what I have shared resonates with you, then now is the moment. Go hit that subscribe button, guys. We're calling on your loyalty because that's what truly sets a subscriber apart from a viewer. Your support amplifies our reach, helping Mind the Gen Gap expand far and wide. And now let me continue. Last week, Lakshan gave us a glimpse into the world of the microgeneration called the Xennials, and we learned the nuances that separate them from the older millennials and the younger Gen Z, the bridge that binds both. Today, I'm diving into another intriguing microgeneration, often referred to as Xennials, sometimes stylized as Xennials. Though I've wondered about the correct pronunciation myself, for the simplicity, we'll stick with Xennials for this episode. Xennials, often called cuspers, sit right in between Gen X and Millennials. Born between 1977 and 1983, they carry a unique blend of both pragmatic Gen X and the optimistic Millennial spirit. Gen X has historically been seen as grounded, occasionally with a hint of cynicism, while Millennials are often viewed as the hopeful, sometimes idealistic generations. But Xennials, they bridge these two worlds, possessing the adaptability and resilience of both. I want to share with you a real story, Lakshan, that will perhaps give you a very exact feel of what a Xennial is capable of. We already know that they have the pragmatic, solution-focused X gene, and since they also embody some millennial DNA, this makes them pretty savvy for the digital landscape as well. So now imagine the year 2005. Facebook was just gaining popularity, becoming the place to reconnect with old friends, shared memories, and to watch alumni groups multiply with nostalgia. For me, this was a time when memories weren't yet digital. They were, stored in physical photos and in film negatives. So I was also that friend who always held my trusty Olympus camera in hand, and that made me the unofficial photographer of our group. With no social media yet, Our moments lived in memory and in the boxes of photos that I'd collected. I remember sorting through these boxes, picking the most shareable photos and bringing them to a laboratory to be scanned, saved to an external drive, and then I'd connect this drive to my computer, upload the images, and create a Facebook album titled Nottingham Days, tagging friends and sharing the memories we'd only once kept in print. I never really gave this much thought, but as I scripted this episode, this anecdote came to my mind. What are your impressions on this, Lakshan?
A good chunk of the time you were sharing this stuff, I'm like, can't relate, can't relate, can't relate. In the very in the very beginning, when you spoke about the Walkman and the Discman, no, I'm like, oh yes, there was a time when that we used to carry that disc-looking thing around and listen to music and walk about. I remember this. I remember that. I remember thinking about that. And as you were sharing this thing with how you would take your photos to a lab and scan them and all, I'm like, I don't know what all that is. I cannot relate at all. I don't know what you were talking about, Goldie, like seriously, because when I was when we were uploading pictures to Facebook, it was we had cameras that could by that time plug into a system and get it done through USB or whatever, right? When you were sharing
Mm-hmm.
this stuff, I'm like, I can't relate. The only thing I remember with like the film negative and all is that you take it to a, what is it called, like a dark room? That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
dark room.
and the only reason I remember this was because, so like Adobe, no, that's your Photoshop. Everybody knows Photoshop and all these other tools, right? There's also another tool called Lightroom, and it's a photo editing software out of their entire bundle of softwares. No, I only found out that it's called Lightroom because the actual thing was once called Darkroom. That is what I was thinking when you were sharing all this stuff. I'm like, oh, that's so fascinating. I mean, if technology was um, felt like it was moving so quickly for us, as you were sharing this stuff, my God, it must have been like night and day for you guys. When you when your own journey of growing up, because it's like at one portion there was barely anything, and suddenly there's all this technology and all this stuff happening. Oh, it's
Mhm.
when I cannot relate to most of what you're saying, if any at all. But as you were sharing it, I was like, this is beautiful. It's so nice to hear. That's what
Thank
I was
you.
thinking when you were sharing all this. Yeah.
I I can empathize with your feelings of not understanding the process because it really is such a long process from print to digital, which essentially was just a need that was created through this platform that suddenly became viral for all of us that were, reconnecting with people suddenly from 10 years before that we'd attended college or university with. And when you feel the need to relive those memories, but you can't do it because you're not in front of those people, but you have this platform where everybody can read what you're writing. So why not see what you shared, which are pictures in this sense? And I still remember very, very clearly my friends telling me, hey, but you have all the pictures. Can't we figure out a way for you to share them with everyone here? And that's where the whole process, as I say, started. So even discovering this ability to take my negatives to a lab, speaking to the guy, I remember saying, but I really want these on a CD. Can you put them on a CD for me? And he said, but what are you going to do with this? I said, I'll put them on my computer and then somehow figure it out. I need to put them on Facebook. And that's what I'm talking about. What is that? That's adaptability, isn't it? It's the need to find a solution no matter what, and not limiting yourself to just saying, oh, well, they're in boxes. I won't do anything with them. No, we wanted to do something with this. And I know that I'm talking about my own experience, but I'm sure there's people out there who are probably going to share so many of their own experiences in the same spirit of adaptability and being a Xennial, you know? Um, so, I'm going to continue today. I obviously shared a personal experience, but I also want to explore what it means to be a Xennial in the workplace, and navigating two worlds with a valuable blended perspective that brings both stability and fresh energy to the table. Before exploring this area, there is something we need to do first. I haven't forgotten. Lakshan, as you hear me describe this microgroup who bridge the gap between, the analog past and a digital future, and in the spirit of last week's conversation, I'm going to invite you to give us the two colors that blend together and represent a Xennial.
So last time I used the example of green and blue, and you came up with aquamarine. No, maybe I will use the colors yellow and green, because to me it's like they come before the green and blue, and I don't know, like the combined, like the in between of yellow and green is like what, lime? Does that count? Because lime lemon, it's one is yellow, one is green, right? So can we go with that?
Okay. Although when you said when you said yellow and green to me, the first thing that came to mind was the Brazilian flag. and and what better word than carioca to describe the green and the yellow. So, but yeah, we can go with lime. I quite like that in the spirit of the neons that we grew up with, right? and of course, every Xennial has a fan, a special corner for their highlighter pens, which we used so avidly and with so much love. So yeah, we're going to go with lime. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And just to touch on this highlighter thing, it's something I picked up from my dad, who is uh, actually, I would say he comes between Boomer and Gen X technically. So he's on the cusp of that, interestingly. But he's obsessed with his highlighters. Maybe not
Highlighters.
now as much as he was, say, 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. But hey, there it is.
And there's more. They're just stored in the background. Oh, the true sign of a Xennial is where are the highlighter pens? Anyway, so let's carry on. Being adaptable, as we all know, is a significant soft skill, right? Valued in the workplace even till today. I was able to get my hands on some research because we all know how much I love my research. And I explored this cohort. There's a lady called Melissa Kemp Taylor, a researcher and doctor of philosophy from Purdue University in West Lafayette in the USA. She's written a paper that explores what makes a Xennial generation unique and how might the knowledge of these differences be beneficial to organizations. This study reveals that generational boundaries aren't strict, they actually blur, creating what we call cusp generations. Now, these microgenerations, like the Xennials, can help to actually ease generational tensions in the workplace by bridging perspectives and offering adaptable work styles. Organizations that create flexible, more inclusive environments for diverse generational needs are better able to meet collective goals. And notably, the paper also highlights that treating employees as individuals rather than stereotypes is key for effective management. This research has actually filled a big gap in academic literature by addressing the unique workplace benefits of these cusp generations. Lakshan, I know what you might be thinking, and you know, you are hearing more in detail about my microgeneration, but as a Xennial yourself, do you see how these cuspers can add value in the workplace?
Oh yeah, absolutely, very much so. Because it's also the case with Xennials, right? We spoke about in the last episode about how they are the hybrid professionals or the cultural translators. They're able to bridge the gap between both your Gen Z and millennials as well. And I can see how that would be the case between millennials and Gen X as well. It's very evident to me, especially given how adaptable you guys naturally are. So it absolutely it's very evident to me how there is so much value that could be added by your micro generation in the workplace.
Yeah. I was actually quite fascinated to read the paper, if I'm honest. So I do invite you all to look this paper up and have a good read. So following on, in more of my research, I also came across a coaching company called Inside Out Development, and they're based out of Alpine in Utah. Um, they have identified 3 traits held by Xennials and how it makes them the generation of the workplace that drives high performance. How so? Well, they are described as adaptive. They have a unique ability to think abstractly and find new solutions. They are equally comfortable from a book, learning from a book or a blog, or listening to an audible recording. This is also already confirmed by Taylor's research, as I mentioned before. Number 2, team-oriented approach. Xennials are relatable, easily adapting to both boomers' nostalgia for simpler days or millennials' fast-paced norms, especially the digital ones, making them flexible team players. And lastly, my favorite one, coachability. While they respect structure, they also bring fresh perspectives. Regular check ins can unlock their insights and ensure their ideas aren't missed. These strengths essentially make Xennials exceptional mentors, coaches, and collaborators, a resource that companies should tap into, drive engagement, and bridge generational divides. Honestly, this data blew my mind. It's eye opening, obviously, because I can personally relate, but I can't help also thinking that I feel so proud that I am a coach myself, and the data proves that we are the generation that are best fit for this. Enough about me, though. I want to know what you're making of all this data, Lakshan.
Everything you shared, I can see all of that in you, all of it, right? You described as being adaptive, thinking abstractly, being able to learn from any format of a resource, book, blog, audible, and of course video and everything else, about being team oriented and being coachable. You're a coach also, so of course you have to be coachable as well to find yourself in the position to be a coach yourself. I can absolutely see how all of these elements are. I can see all of them in you. It's very evident to me, and I think if there is one of these traits, I would say that I wish all generations have, or at least the younger ones have, and the ones moving forward have, is the ability to uh, consume resources in multiple formats. I think we're a lot more geared towards the more recent ones, whatever format is more recent, and our ability to pick up the other formats and find ourselves completely engaged. I think we're losing that personally. If there's one thing I would say will really benefit us, it would be that. And I think somehow that it would also play into the coachability aspect, not just being coached by a coach or someone else, but in the sense of being receptive to any form of guidance in any format.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, an example that came to my mind, which I will again share, that's very relatable as well. The reason why we are open to all forms of format in terms of our learning, it was between, I would say, at least in my case, 1989ish to 1996 or 7. So that's not a long time. It's just barely less than 10 years, I think, where I went from, as you remember, the Walkman, the cassette tape, and the cassette tape was quite fascinating for us because we could not only buy music that was already mixed on a tape, so you go and buy in a store the tape that already has some songs on it, but we could also buy blank tapes and record songs on it and make what we called a mixtape. So for us, the tape was just a source. The result was what it gave us. We didn't care that the music came from a cassette tape or later on a CD, or in between we had the mini disc, and later on we had to understand what MP3 meant. We didn't care. We just cared for what was coming out on the other end, which is why it was it was second nature for us to consume music in the ways that we did. And I'm pretty sure that did some of us have records at home, record players? It would have been the same. I didn't grow up with any records, but I vividly remember making a lot of mixtapes and from songs on the radio, and then gifting them to my friends or receiving them. And then once the CD came, you could also make your own mixed CD. We even figured out how to do that. That's what I'm saying. It's just such a quotidian example that explains the reason why Xennials are the way they are. I do feel like I've blown my trumpet enough today, but it was about us, and obviously I couldn't think of anyone else but to speak about but my own experiences. And it does feel fitting to wrap up here in today's episode. I think delving into generational traits is like opening a world of fascinating mysteries. As we approach actually our 10th episode next week, I've realized how profoundly timing shapes our experiences. Being born just a few years apart can frame our worldviews in ways that are both subtle and profound. While change has always defined each generation, the pace of evolution in recent decades has intensified, creating natural segues even within the same generation, hence the cuspers. Understanding our own generational identity, I think, empowers us to value the contributions of those before and after us. And our generational journey isn't isolated, but rather woven together like a spectrum of blended colors, as Lakshan and I often say, each bringing a unique shade, to the bigger picture. And with that, we've come to the end of episode 9 of Mind the Gen Gap podcast. I have been your host, Goldie.
And I've been your co-host, Lakshan. Thank you so much for listening and watching and overall just tuning in all the way to the very end.
Muchas gracias.
See you in the next one.
Hasta pronto.
Bye.